Good morning, everyone. I'd like to call to order the open meeting for Thursday, December 7th, 2023, and ask the Commission Secretary for information on today's agenda.
Each commissioner has independently reviewed the minutes of the open meeting of Thursday, November 30th, 2023, and each has informed me there is no need to discuss the minutes.
I move we approve the minutes of Thursday, November 30th, 2023.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Each commissioner has independently reviewed the agenda, and each has informed me there is no need to discuss the notices associated with agenda items 2 through 11, the draft order to reopen notice and request for comment in docket 3320 ER 113 associated with agenda item 12, the draft order to reopen notice and request for comment in docket 6650 CG 271 associated with agenda item 13, the draft order to reopen notice and request for comment in docket 6650 TG 117 associated with agenda item 14. The suggested minute associated with agenda item 16, determining that focused cost effectiveness test shall value avoided carbon emissions in quad 4 using a starting point value of $24.77 per ton and be escalated at a rate of 7% annually, and approving the EWG's recommendation of adopting a low-income benefits adder of 20% to be applied to programs and offerings targeting customers at or below 60% of statewide median income, or the suggested minute associated with agenda item 17, accepting staff's recommendations as presented in Table 2 and Table 4 of the memorandum.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. I move we approve the notices of investigation associated with agenda items 2 through 10.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Move we approve the notice of proceeding associated with agenda item 11.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
In docket 3320 ER 113, I move we approve the order to reopen notice and request for comments.
Second. All in favor?
Aye. In docket 6650 CG 271, I move we approve the order for limited reopening and request for comments.
Second. All in favor?
Aye. In docket 6650 TG 117, I move we approve the order to reopen notice and request for comments.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
For agenda item 16 in docket 5 FE 104, I move we approve the focus on energy items consistent with the Secretary's description.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And in agenda item 17, also docket 5 FE 104, move we approve staff's recommendations for the budgets and timing of Quad 4 priority topic area research.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, that brings us to agenda item 15, which is docket 1-CAF-2024. So this is the Citizens Utility Board of Wisconsin's request for approval of their 2024 operating budget. We first approved a budget for CUB under the new Act 24 in 2021. Prior to that, CUB had to seek funding under the prior Act 383 and Act 32. And so under Act 24, we are required to review the budgeting and expenditure of the funds for CUB. And we shall approve the annual budget filed by CUB if it is consistent with the statute and covers the reasonable annual costs. So in its submission for 2024, CUB states that the budget for the 2024 period will allow for effective and efficient representation and protection of the interests of residential, small commercial, and small industrial energy utility customers before the commission and other venues. So their proposed budget is just over $1 million. And then after our review and accounting for unallowable costs, so they're not allowed to use these costs for lobbying or for any work on municipally owned utilities. And then looking at other revenue sources, their funding request in front of us is the full $900,000. Now, that $900,000 is the cap under the statute. In any year, the total of all amounts that the energy utilities are required to pay CUB can't exceed $900,000. And I think it's a really important fact that we all have to keep in the center of our minds is that these are also customer dollars. So I think Sometimes that gets lost when we're talking about the funding, but the funding is coming from public utility customers. So what we have in front of us represents an increase of 10.8% from what we approved for 2023. They've also requested to make a change in how they are utilizing their accounting treatment, and they'd like to be able to utilize an accounting treatment that would allow them to carry forward a projected working capital surplus. So I had a couple of questions about their proposal and their budget. First, as it relates to that projected working capital surplus, the last time we took up their budget, they requested to retain their projected working capital surplus, and we denied that request. And we reduced their funding by that amount. And so I am in the same spot that I was last year. We were very intentional and deliberate when we approved their first budget under the law, and we directed them to establish operating reserves. And those operating reserves are important, right? Because they're there to cover expenses or situations that might arise that would require them to dip into those funds, but they haven't had to do that. And so I want to be really careful that we are not setting up a precedent where every year, if they have working capital surplus, that they're allowed to retain that. I think, as we say with utilities, we also have to be mindful and make sure that the advocates are sticking to their budgets and that they are behaving the same way that they're asking the utilities to behave when it comes to sticking to budgets and making sure that those budgets are run tightly. It's a little concerning to me that we're seeing a double-digit increase request, and there is also a year-over-year decrease in their fundraising numbers. And so I think that this new model is excellent. I think it provides a stable source of funds that CUB has needed for a number of years. But I want to make sure that every year when we come and we look at these costs, that they are being held to the same budgetary standards that they're asking the utilities to abide by. So because of that, as it relates to the total budget, I'm actually at alternative 2, and I would remove the entire amount, the net working capital surplus of $45,865. And that, again, is because I think that they need to be able to work within the amounts that they have. And it wasn't ever my intention for them to be able to carry forward that surplus every single year. Sort of hand in glove with that is a request, as I mentioned, to use an accounting treatment when there is a projected working capital surplus. There's not a lot of information that was presented as to why. And so it appears, based on conversations with our CFO, that the accounting would allow them to carry forward the excess working capital. But I don't know why. I don't know why we're being asked to approve this right now. And absent additional information, I don't feel comfortable. That's not to say that they can't come back and provide more specific information to support the request, but there wasn't enough in their submission for me to feel comfortable approving that. So as it relates to the working capital accounting treatment, I'm at alternative 3, which is to just keep things the way they are. And if they come up with data or, a very compelling factual basis, then we'll consider that the next time we look at their budget. They've also asked to modify or eliminate the reporting requirements that are in place for them understanding that these reporting requirements are a carryover from the last funding mechanism, and I get that it doesn't fit squarely with how they operate, but they didn't give us any suggestions. And so it's hard for me to sit here and look at what was presented and come up with a better reporting method. One idea was to report on the hours that they're spending on unallowable expenses, and then we can use that to make modifications to their funding requests. But that, to me, falls a little short. And I don't know that it gets us to exactly where we need to be. The reporting requirements are put in place to ensure that we have all the information necessary to make sure that these utility customer dollars are being spent appropriately. It's not because it's just information that we think it's nice to have. It's really important information. It's also really important information if we were to be audited in the future. So I don't feel comfortable eliminating the reporting requirements. Initially, I was going to come up with something, but I think it makes more sense to simply impose the same quarterly reporting requirements as have been used, and then CUB can come back and tell us what type of reporting they can file. So it's not my intent to make it unduly burdensome, but we do need the information. And so absent a concrete proposal from them, I'm at alternative 1, and I would keep the same quarterly reporting requirements. And then finally, they've requested that the annual budget request filing deadline be changed to November 1st. I think it makes it actually a little more difficult on them, but that's not a reason for me to deny their request. So for moving the deadline to November 1st, I was at alternative 1, and I would allow them to change the filing date. So that's where I am.
All right, perfect. Thank you. For the first item for me, I was at alternative 2 as well, but I had a different number. Out of the $45,865 that you mentioned, Chair, they're proposing to carry forward portion of that, $24,746, and really that's needed to meet their full budget for next year from my perspective. So I was prepared to remove just that difference, and that is listed on page 6 of our memo, is the $21,119. So that's where I was coming in with that one. As far as how to treat the working capital going forward, I was in the same spot as you. I was at alternative 3. I think that we should continue to look at that. I had a good conversation with our CFO as well about that, and so, but based on what we have, I think looking at that every year is where I'm at.
Yep.
On reporting, I struggled the same as you, and so I came up with what we do for some of our other applicants, which is work with staff. So I was coming in looking at maybe an alternative 2 and looking at working with staff on identifying, because as you said, we have perhaps legislative audits that we need to be prepared for. But that may not be the level of detail as far as hourly needing to track every single hour in every case. So there may be a middle ground that is workable, and I didn't know what that was either, but I thought perhaps they could work that out. So the other option you kind of proposed is status quo for now and spend the next year working that out.
Yeah. Right.
And then I was at alternative 1 on the final issue.
Okay.
I was also fine with November 1st. It sounded like they've got estimates that if they can get through 3/4 of the year and their open enrollment for benefits is going to give them a better estimate. So like you said, it shortens their time.
Right.
But if it gives them better numbers, then it probably is acceptable.
Yep.
So,
Okay.
okay, that's where I was coming in.
Great. All right, Commissioner Strand.
Thank you. Well, I'm well aware that I'm only going to be able to use this card for a couple more months. I was not here for the 2021 and 2023 budget discussion, so I appreciate the information that was provided in the memo and also the chair's description of that aspect of these decisions. I was also at alternative 2 for the first item. And initially, I was comfortable reducing it by that delta, the 21,119, but I think that the reasons that the chair stated make a lot of sense, and I could definitely meet you at the reduction of the 45,865. For the remaining items, I was in agreement with the two of you, so I was alternative 3 for item 2, alternative 1 for item 3, and alternative 1 for item 4. I don't object to Commissioner Huebner's idea about working with staff on the reporting conditions, but I also didn't have anything to offer, so.
Right.
That's where I am on those, but if we need to have further discussion about that,
Yeah.
I would entertain it.
So I think we could do both, right? So we just, right now, as we're sitting here, we impose the same quarterly reporting requirements, and then also add Commissioner Huebner's suggestion to work with staff to come up with new filing
Yeah.
requirements.
That would work. Did you also then want, because then to change the reporting requirements, you either need to make that a delegated decision, or once staff comes up with new, it would come back to then modify your order, so,
I think it should come back.
Yeah, I'm comfortable with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
okay.
And then on the reporting as well, there is the adding a deadline of 30 days after the quarter that's
Oh,
embedded in
right.
that Alt 1, and I did support that element.
Yes.
So,
100%. Yep.
Sam?
Okay. All right.
so then I think so I would disagree on the budget. I would do the 21,119, but you're going to stay where you're at?
Yes.
Okay, all right. Are you good, Cindy? Okay, I'll stay where I'm at on that, but I'll make the motion. In docket 1, CAF 2024, move we approve the 2024 operating budget of the Citizens Utility Board of Wisconsin, consistent with our discussion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, that concludes our official business for today. The next open meeting is scheduled for Thursday, December 14th at 10:30 a.m.
Move we stand adjourned until Thursday, December 14th.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.